Good day, everyone. I am Christine, the moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone to today's webinar, that is Workplace Investigations, Policies, Procedures, and Practice. I would like to introduce our presenter for today, Dr. Susan Strauss. Dr. Susan Strauss, RN, is a national and international speaker, trainer, and consultant on workplace and healthcare violence and a recognized expert on workplace and school harassment and bullying. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Susan.
Well, thank you, Christina, and greetings, everybody from Minnesota. So let's look at the objectives for today. One, we're going to identify what are the events that actually trigger you to do an investigation. What are the lists, the steps of those investigations? What are the techniques in questioning? We'll look at what constitutes quality documentation. We will summarize privacy issues, and I'll explain search guidelines. We'll determine credibility. How do you determine if somebody's telling the truth or not? And then once you've determined credibility, you're going to have to reach your conclusions. What is the outcome of your investigation? We will list pertinent laws that can influence the investigation, and we'll look at some challenging situations. And so what are the issues that require you to conduct an investigation? Issues that require you to check it out and see what's really going on. What laws may require you to conduct an investigation? And HIPAA. Good old HIPAA. We're all familiar with HIPAA, aren't we? Why in the world do we even conduct a workplace investigation in the first place? And you want to reduce exposure to any claims. So who should conduct these workplace investigations? Those two investigations are going to be done quite differently. Now, who would constitute appropriate investigators or an external HR consultant? Who should investigate? Now, these are the qualities to look for in an investigator. What about using a lawyer as an investigator? What would be some of the pluses? What are some of the minuses? What about using internal versus external investigators? So it's important for you to vet them. So the importance of the investigation then is what the triggers were for an investigation. So what are the objectives of the investigation? Because you have to remedy the situation. You might say, okay, I better do a different investigation here. So let's look at what is a complaint. So when should an investigation occur? And gossip constitutes should have known. So who do you interview? So this gives you an idea. There's a bundle, right? So now we're going to develop the plan. What is the plan? So the information that I told you needs to be on each written piece of investigative paper. Okay, so some questioning tips then. And then you just keep asking, well, what happened next and what happened next? Now, when interviewing the complainant, you just allow the interview to unfold. Here are examples of retaliation. This is how the EEOC defines retaliation. So what documents are you going to review? Well, check and see what the NLRA says. And if you're still not sure, check with your attorney. What other documents do you need to look at? You may have some additional ones. Now, what about talking to the accused? And don't ever try to trick the person. So what are some of the challenges? And of course, all of this gets documented. Okay, more challenges. So you remember you're the one in charge. Now, defamation is a false communication, all right? And here are some tips to avoid defamation. Now, is a formal investigation necessary? Let's look at a few more things that are going to make a difference. Who is a witness? These are not character witnesses, by the way. So when interviewing witnesses, it's the same as with everybody. And you ask for additional information. I'm giving you this on taking statements. Here I've given you something to read later about documentation. This is just some information on creating documentation. But now you've got to assess credibility. With that, you need to draw conclusions. Now, disciplining. The misconduct must stop. to help you determine the misconduct. It always has to stop. And these are examples of corrective action. And then what you need to do is, after all of this has occurred, I've written this up in one follow-up. That should help you. And then what are your follow-up actions if you end up firing this person? There you go. Here is the template for the final report. Now, this is the investigative file. Every single thing goes in there. These are the issues that are going to be most likely challenged in litigation. So anyway, this just tells you, I think these are kind of no-brainers. Well, listen, I want to tell everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that this was beneficial for you. Have a good rest of the week. Thank you for joining us. And Christina, thank you as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan. That concludes the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now and have a wonderful day.